So how was the week for everyone?
Hmm. I was I was at my brother's just cooking for everybody. I don't really remember in between cooking and cleaning.
You don't remember cooking? What did you cook?
Um, I mean, it's a mission because when I go out to buy groceries, I got to buy like for his whole household plus my parents. And then
Does he have a big family?
no, they've got a live-in nanny, and it's just him and his wife and the twins.
Oh, okay. How old are the twins?
They're going to be 3 in August.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Fun age. Homo.
They don't call it the terrible twos for nothing, you know.
I
And there's
took
I remember, I
I
remember my
took
nephew being pretty bad at the age 3.
yeah. Oh shit! I gotta get the sake.
I took my boy to the beach for the first time since the pandemic.
Which one?
We went to our little secret surf spot down in Newport off Balboa.
I know which one. I think I went there. Is that where they have the little tide pool? The little pool tide pools with
Yeah,
I forgot what's the name of that. Well, you don't have to say it if you don't want people to.
little Corona Del Mar.
Little Corona, that's what it was.
All right, I see.
We're
I'm
live.
saying hello to 20 people who are watching on my YouTube channel already.
Oh,
Hi,
so we're
Oh
live.
yeah,
hi 20 people, and
it's on my.
apparently something is happening on my Facebook channel as well. So hello, Facebook channel. The show hasn't officially started yet, so there's still
Everyone loves this this little awkward moment in the beginning where we're all trying to figure out how to
We were
navigate
like, are we live?
around the technology.
You know, I still want to post the link.
Yeah.
Shall we post the link so we tell people actually that we're doing this?
I actually still don't see
Yeah.
you on YouTube.
So we tell people. It's always
I
great.
see mine on my Facebook channel.
Okay, go.
And I still don't see it live on YouTube.
Right. How about an Instagram? I'll do a little Instagram story. I'll do a little
I
Instagram
think
story.
it looks like you guys are on
Oh,
Yeah,
we're on one. Look at it.
Facebook. Chris, you're on all.
Hey everyone, we're currently starting our DJs and Beers shows, and you might want to join us. Swipe up.
Let's get crazy.
Yeah, all the channels are good, guys.
Say again.
Alright.
All the channels look good.
Yeah. Are we on? Are we live?
Yeah, we are. Since a while already.
Oh.
What's up, Dan? Dan just texted me. He says he's watching.
Hi everyone. Welcome
Yo,
back.
yo.
Nice to see you guys again.
Back from the hiatus. The quick
And
one.
I guess we should say that Matt's wife's celebrating her birthday today.
Oh, yeah.
So we say that. Happy birthday, Eva.
Happy birthday.
Eva.
Happy birthday.
All right, everyone. Oh yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
I got my Modern Times.
Mm.
What is that?
Hazy IPA from Modern Times.
You're even rocking the shirt, I see.
Yeah, representing. It's coincidence. I put on the shirt and I grabbed the Modern Times beer. I'm not trying to advertise or anything.
All right, everyone. Welcome to DJs and Beers episode number 11. With me is Ali, Mo, and David. Matt has the day off, and we're happy to be back. And we have a really nice guest tonight. And since we changed the way we do the show like every week, and we have no structure, I would say we just get him on right away. Our guest tonight, we're very happy. A man who needs no introduction is Mr. Carl Grake, and I'll just put him on here right now. Carl, are you actually there and you're ready to join us?
Carl is here, yes.
I think we see Carl's studio.
Wow.
Connecting to audio.
Sweet.
Carl has an amazing studio.
I bet.
Yo.
What's up?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, there you go.
What's
Can you
up?
hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can
Good
hear you.
evening, Carl. Good to have you on the show.
What's happening, man? Long time no see.
Really long time no see.
Yeah, maybe I need a little more light on my side, huh?
Nah, you're fine.
Is it okay? That might be a little too blue.
No, blue is good. It counters the red that I have going on here for me.
Oh yeah.
I can even do more red if
Like
you
a
want.
bluish purple. That looks great, actually.
It's a bit.
Yeah.
It's pretty blue.
My teeth look like crazy.
How are you, Carl?
Is it like a black light?
Nah, it's just a blue light. You know, I got one of those. One of those kind of table lamps that looks like it might be in a laboratory, but I put a blue light in one, and a red light in the other one. And yeah, that's
Does
the way
it
it is.
detect viruses and germs and stuff in your studio?
What? Yeah, I'm what was that show that used to be on MTV where they take the blue light and they go on the bed to see how much
Exactly that.
nastiness is on the bed?
That didn't really like deter any of us from continuing to travel. I remember like reading so many articles with like really nasty photographs of just how, gross these hotel rooms are, but didn't
I mean,
really...
who's actually going to a hotel and with the blue light and checking? You kind of
Yeah.
have to just trust that they're clean, I guess, and you don't wake up with anything.
Well,
Carl,
you,
what
tell
are you
me that
drinking?
you guys have got bed bugs while being on tour?
I never
Bed
had.
bugs. Better not.
Yeah, actually, that's a good. Has that ever happened to any of you guys?
Not
Or gotten
me.
anything weird from bed? I mean, it's not to me. No, waking up with itching.
Well, I have to say that I've been very fortunate not to have bed bugs nor any STDs.
Oh,
That's a win-win right there.
Thanks for volunteering that information.
That is why
Yeah,
you
well,
have that
know
blue
what?
light.
I'm clean, baby. I'm clean.
Hey,
That
that's
is
a
why you
real
have that
relevant
blue light.
thing here in DJ world, I guess. You know.
So, Carl, usually we start the show by just chatting with each other without having the guest on. Today, we decided to have you on right away. So we'll just ask you how was your last week? Would be kind of a stupid question to ask right now. Are you in Detroit, by the way? Because I just put Detroit in your name here.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, definitely.
So I did that right.
Yeah, well, I mean, Detroit. That might as well be my middle name. So fuck it, Carl Detroit Craig.
Shall I put it in there like this? I can do that.
The last week. So you want me to answer?
Sure.
yeah. How's it been?
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah. The last week's been. I mean, it's in the U.S. period has been quite crazy. Luckily in Detroit, we haven't had so many issues. The police has been good about things, and they've been trying to make sure that they work with local organizers as much as possible. Well, known local organizers as much as possible. So, the mayor has been cool. Luckily, we're not like DC where, the head chief in charge just decided to go all ape shit on everybody, So it's been okay. But what the exciting thing for me though is that since my birthday, we're trying to do this every Saturday. Is that we do? I just invite everyone over, and we have 10 records. The thing is that you bring 10 records, 10 of the records that either are your favorite records or inspired you to do what you do, and then you play it vinyl only.
Mm-hmm.
And no mixing. So it's
Could
just,
be anything.
huh?
It could be anything.
It could be anything. Well, I don't like country western, so hopefully no one would bring that. And Lawrence Welk, no Lawrence Welk. So, but other than that, it's pretty much no holds barred. Yeah.
Are those rules on the wall when they come in?
Nah. Nah, it morphs as time goes on, which is cool. So
did you discover some interesting like perspectives on the people who brought like a certain record that you wouldn't have expected?
Stacy Pullen has been bringing a lot of electro, which is really great. You know, and that because we didn't grow up in the same neighborhood, but we grew up around the same neighborhood, and we're like 10 days difference in age. So, you know, things that he was bringing out were things that I forgot about. And it's really quite amazing to you know, to hear his perspective on it. And then I don't DJ during these things. I'll play some things during the beginning, but I cook during the time when other people are playing. So I'm listening in a way that I like a lot better than just kind of standing there or trying to dance or whatever. I'm listening while I'm doing something, and it's inspiring me to pay attention to what I'm doing a bit more. And it's a lot of fun. I really, really love it. And I call it Vinyl Freaks.
Vinyl.
And is it just one turntable and you just play the record from the very beginning to the very end?
That was the objective at first, was that I would do one turntable. But I do have two turntables and a mixer. And if somebody like Rick Wilhite was playing some really amazing music this weekend, and when I hear him mix, I'm, no mixing! Quit mixing! And you know, he's like always kind of pushing me a little bit more. He'll mix something that's like, no mixing, man! No mixing!
I'm sure after a few drinks, somebody wants to get on there and like just go for it.
yeah, but you know, I've been mixing for 30 plus years. You know, it's like after a while, it's kind of you need a break in order to even rethink of how to present the music. And you know, I always loved the idea of what the DJs down in Jamaica were doing, where they would use a turntable and an echo box.
Yeah.
And you know, and between the tracks, you just have the echo going. The guy gets on the mic talking shit, and then you put on another record, and then you play it. You know, I love that concept of it, and maybe I should bring that to this. But I think what would really be funny, but I don't know if my colleagues or our colleagues would appreciate it, is if I bring one turntable that is. I have this VPI Scoutmaster here, so the motor separate is belt drive, and in order to change the speed, you have to change where the belt is in position on the motor. So that one would be total purist. I would love to do it, but I think there would be a lot of resistance to such thing.
Is this something you do privately, or is it like a live? You do stream this thing?
No, I don't stream it. The purpose isn't to stream it. Yeah. It's for, you know, because none of us are traveling right now. So hey, come on over, let's play some records. And we just sit in my backyard and drink and eat a bit. I cook and then all that. And I don't know if you guys know Lee Quinones, who he's one of the real early taggers in New York. He was from Lower East Side or something like that, but he's in Wild Style, if you know that movie.
Like Graffiti Tag,
yeah, Graffiti Tagger. Yeah, he was over on Saturday, and he's like, man, I gotta cook next week. I'm bringing all this Puerto Rican food next week. We doing this. It's like, okay, good. We're gonna do this. So that's good.
That movie was amazing, Wild Style. The soundtrack as well. What a time
the album's
of
great.
New York. Wow, I loved it.
Yeah.
I think the first early hip hop record I have, and since we're talking about vinyl, was Run DMC's debut album.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And I can't tell you how many times I just put it on and listened to every song carefully from beginning to end, both sides.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Like really, like listening. You know.
And that's how the records were made at the time. The records weren't made to mix, you know. Yeah. They weren't made as DJ tools. They were made as statements. It was a record, you know. And that's what I love about making music. You know, I had tweeted something the other day that when I started making records, I don't make records for DJs. My whole thing is that I remember back when I was first starting. There was a guy, Art Payne. Art Payne, he's the cat. I used to go down to WMC with him and my old partner Damon Booker, and I play my tracks and stuff to Art, and he go, man, you got to make it for the DJ. It's gotta have like 4 bars of kick drum at the beginning or something. It's like, fuck that shit. So that's why, like, on all that 69 stuff, it just goes berserk. Because that was like a rebellion to, you know, to making records that had to be for DJs in comparison to just making records, just making something that makes an impact when it comes on.
Yeah. Were you a DJ first before you started making music, or was it music first? No,
I was a guitar player.
Okay, that makes
play?
sense.
I'm starting back again. I've been I have a Strat from like 86 or something like that I got. I was so proud of it when I got it, like 16, 17 years old. Yeah. And I still have it. You know, my mama gave it to me.
It's funny. My dad bought me a Stratocaster. It wasn't a nice one. It was like a made in Mexico Strat when I was 14, and that's what I learned to play on. Yeah, and I still have it too, man. It's like it's my baby. It's my first guitar. It's probably got some corny stickers on it or something, but you know, it's a part.
Yeah, you gotta keep it. You know, it's like that is, you know, it's like never forget your roots kind of thing. You know, exactly. You might be able to move out of the hood, but you got to go back to the hood to replant yourself. You know.
Totally.
Yeah.
Carl, you got into electronic music? Did you just completely put away the guitar, or did it make appearances like heavily affected in certain iconic tracks of yours over the years?
I played guitar in Land Cruising. There was some guitar on that record, and
that was 95, right? 90.
Yeah, 90, 93 or 95. It was after Throw. So whenever Throw came out, it was.
I remember that was
95
up because that came out on, and I used to love this label, Blanco y Negro.
Yeah, right.
It was like an indie label.
Yeah. So
you got indie cred like from the get-go, which was great.
But did we ever talk about the guy who Blanco and Negro is his label, or was his label?
We probably did a long time ago, but
okay. Well, he's the same guy who started Rough Trade.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
And it was really crazy to me because I think they thought I was out of my mind when I was like, oh my God, when I was 17, I used to listen to the Smiths and blah, 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 blah. It was just like when I walked into the Rough Trade offices, it's like, oh my God, And he, you know, and I had a conversation with Chris and Cozy about it. It's like, you know, you guys must think it's crazy that, you know, these two black guys in Detroit, me and DJ Stingray, were sitting in his basement just listening to Throbbing Gristle over and over again, you know, and I think I talked with Adrian about it when we had met that time, that me and Sherrod were listening to African Head Charge constantly in the basement, you know. But the Smiths, I learned a lot of guitar from the Smiths, from Johnny Marr, and I didn't realize until recently, and it really made sense, that Johnny Marr really loves Nile Rodgers' guitar playing, and it's very similar what they do. Very, very similar what they do.
Yeah.
Complete by chance, Chris Carter did a remix for me, which is just released on Mute today, actually.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I'm still
Carl,
speechless.
that was a perfect plug for this new single.
What? I don't know.
That was like a perfect. Yeah.
It would be stupid.
I knew
not
that
to
was coming.
that.
Well, it's funny because Chris and Cozy just did a remix for me as well, which we haven't set a release date yet. But it's like when they actually agreed to do it, my jaw hit the floor. It's like unbelievable. But it's such a huge inspiration on me growing up.
Yeah.
Were you guys also Psychic TV fans, or no, or just Throbbing?
Just Throbbing Gristle for me.
I liked some of the early Psychic TV stuff. It's kind of hit or miss, but always appreciated the work.
Yeah.
Carl, you tweeted earlier that week that in the past 3 months of the lockdown, you've got a new spiritual relationship with music.
Yeah.
I kind of, I felt that because I feel that too somehow. How do you think that happened? What's different?
Vinyl, listening to vinyl.
Yeah.
You know, that was a major thing for me because, you know, we're traveling all the time, and you know, I don't know if all of us are only using digital means, but you know, we're listening to music on the run. You know, it's like we're concentrating. We're listening to music like people who've mixed records, who've DJ'd mixing for 30 years, and that's why me coming back to vinyl and sitting here, like for instance, I'm just sitting here now, and there's the VPI that's sitting here. I don't know if you can see that. And then, you know, it's just by sitting here and taking the record and putting it on and putting the screwing down the vinyl and then putting the needle on and making sure it's at the right speed and everything, and then push start is like just a revelation in comparison to listening to, you know, 10 seconds of a track and then skipping down to another 10 seconds and another 10 seconds and say, okay, yeah, I could use it. Because, you know, it got to the point where I started listening to music like tools instead of listening to music like their statements. Yeah. You know, and of course, with a lot of electronic music that happens right now, they're designed to be tools. And I don't really like that anymore. They're designed to be, nothing's designed to make that statement like, let's change the world, or, you know, protest songs or any of that kind of stuff. They're designed to be like, okay, well, you know, when it comes on, you start the vibe, and then it breaks down, and then you put your fucking hands up, and then the fucking shit comes on with some loud explosions or some, you know, mist noises or whatever, and then you fucking mix out of it to the next thing, and it's like, it's
functional.
I'm over it right now.
Functional. Yeah,
functional. Yeah.
Yeah, I could relate to that a little bit. I've always appreciated the format of albums myself more than anything because of those exact reasons. I mean, as a producer, as a music writer, I've always enjoyed the process of writing albums because I've always felt it had more weight than just creating a DJ tool that has such a incredibly short shelf life that works for a little bit amount of time, and then it's like yesterday's news and
right.
less than, you know.
Exactly. And the great thing about albums, even when we were making electronic music albums, was that there would still be a variety that was there. You would maybe have a tempo change, or, you know, maybe there'll be something like an ambient track, or, you know, maybe half the album is ambient and half the album is dance or something. But it just seems to, and this term came up, which you know, I really like the term, but I despise it as well, which is business techno, which is just like, Jesus, you know, it just puts it right in the focus of what it is. It's like, okay, you know what? I come in, I play this shit, and I leave, and I get paid. Boom. There we go, you know, and it all just sounds fucking the same to me. I don't mean to sound like an asshole here, but god damn, you know, please start sampling some shit, and, you know, do some reverse samples, or put some guitar in it, or you know, come on, let's like, you know, let's like have a movement that can be a global movement that changes the music. Because, you know, especially with techno, if we don't do things to try to separate ourselves, then we get lumped in with EDM, we get lumped in with, you know, all these things that are here today, gone tomorrow kind of stuff, you know. So that was always the great thing about at least Detroit music, was that, you know, for the beginning, you had the electro things that Juan was doing, but you had, you know, the more orchestral things that Derek was doing, and Derek would, you know, do things like Beyond the Dance. That was just like a freaking, you know, masterpiece of orchestration and build up and everything, you know?
Yeah.
And then Kevin making his tracks and commercial things, but then making tracks that were just beating you over the fucking head. And then MK, you know, and then Blake Baxter. And then when Kenny Larkin came around and started putting more jazz stuff into it, there were just all these great things that you know came from us, from my colleagues here in Detroit. But you know, there's things from New York that were coming out. The differences in the sounds from New York music, and then you know when Ali and Sharam were doing Deep Dish, and then they came in and they started putting their thing in there, and you know with Chicago before us with Larry Heard, and you know there was just so much of variety for it, you know, so much of variety for it, and I. You know, maybe it's Seth said something a while back. He said, man, all these tracks, they sound like Apple loops. and it's getting even more to that point where, you know, it just seems like, okay, you know, you're just going to take something from here, a bass line that somebody made on a loop from here, and a drum line that somebody took from the loop there, and then you know, splashes and stuff from here, and then you put them together like painting by numbers, and you're expecting to make these fast hits and stuff, but there's no statement in it. You know, we could talk about musicianship and all that too, but you know, it's the difference between, it's like somebody being inspired by Andy Warhol, but they decide to dumb it down even more, so into just a paint by numbers thing, you know.
So out of all those guys in Detroit, it was Derek who you met. What are you drinking first of all? Is that mezcal? No, tequila.
Tequila.
We didn't even do beers.
Maybe I should get my tequila bottle out from our two episodes ago.
Yeah.
I'm running out of beer.
Cheers, Carl.
Yeah. Well, I don't drink beer, so I'm drinking tequila today.
You're fine with that.
Okay.
And my friend the other day made a comment about my belly, and I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm not drinking anywhere near the amount of alcohol that I typically drink if we were touring, you know, under usual circumstances. So how can my belly be big? So now I'm like self-conscious about
it's all that sourdough you're baking.
Baby.
I sent Carl pics of this the other night. Like, I have this really tiny Japanese grill that I got in Tokyo in January, and some Japanese charcoal, which is called binchotan, which burns really hot for a really long time. It also takes you a long time to get it lit. So I was sitting there trying to get this lit and really excited about, you know, when you're barbecuing, you're excited, you know, and
definitely.
And you want a beer while you're doing whatever it is you're doing. There's got to be a beer nearby. So I must have had like 3 or 4 beers just getting it lit. Then, you know, I don't know how many beers while I was grilling everything. Then I ran out of shit to grill and was just like skewering whatever I could find and just drinking and drinking and drinking. And afterwards, I'm like, Jesus, man, like, nobody should drink that much beer, and no wonder my belly's so big. So
it's
anyway,
also the lack of calories to burn
for this episode, unfortunately.
I'm gonna get a new beer, but before that, I would love to go back to touch the subject with the value of music, because I had the same experience. I only have a few vinyls here, and I took the time. Then I just have one turntable here in my place where I am right now. So I'm just putting on a record, and I'm listening to it, and there's so many memories connected to every record. And then I remember these old days when I was like 16, 17, where I had to save basically money for a whole week to buy this one maxi single at the end of the week. And I carried it home, and I was just like, oh, this is my new record that I have. I mean, this was obviously a little over the top, because the money you paid for this piece of vinyl was a little overblown because of all the people in the chain who made money with it. Now we're in the complete opposite. Music is worth essentially nothing, because the chain has been shortened. But how can we get young people to cherish music a little bit more if they actually have access to it so easily and so cheap and for free, essentially, you know?
It's because it's how it's consumed. It's like now you can just open up your phone and search any song, and you can even get the Shazam a song and have it at your fingertips. Whereas it's like what Carl was saying, it's like you get the vinyl, you put it on the turntable, there's like such a deeper connection to the music. You
there
know?
is
So
a ritual to it.
did we value
like click, listen, click.
Did we value music more than the kids today? Are the kids today missing something because of the short attention span kind of lifestyle?
Well, that and going to the store and you had to go to a store and buy music, like buy a physical piece of music instead of just downloading on your phone. Like that, there's that whole connection that's missing.
That was part of the ritual too. Spending 4 or 5 hours
record store,
going through racks, and then like sometimes you know, if you couldn't listen to it, you judged it by like the label, if it was a reputable label, or the artist, or the producer, or the engineer. You would read the labels and study them and know all the people that were, you know, involved in the making of all these records. And certain names like Gareth Jones and Adrian Sherwood or whatever would jump out at you, and then you looked at the cover art. And I remember like all those old like ambient records from Tangerine Dream, Klaus Schultze, looking at the cover art. And to me, when I looked at that, it just looked like it was from another world. It was from a world that I wanted to go to and visit. And I felt like if I took that home and sat down and went through that ritual of like putting it on the turntable and listening to it from beginning to end, studying the artwork and the credits and everything like that, all that like informed that experience. And it became a ritualistic, really satisfying experience that people these days, I don't know, does it make sense to wax nostalgic about how it was for us? Or, I mean, do people would they understand that right now, or not really?
I think the more we value our music, the more people who consume it value it too. I think I've tried to practice this myself with trying to release records. Even if people aren't buying a vinyl record, I've always tried to include some kind of physical, tangible thing that people can hold on to. You know, I don't care what it is at all, whether it's like a lithograph print of art or some kind of signed card or just something that people can hold on to. That's the only way that I was able to manage getting people to grasp onto something and care about it the same way. But to go back to what you were saying, like I could even recall some of my favorite albums of all time that I've ever owned were records that I purchased, and maybe when I went home and listened to it, I didn't really like it as much. But because I spent the money on it and I already had it, I had no choice but to listen to it over and over and over and over and over again. And you start picking out all these small nuances in the record, and they ended up becoming some of the most inspiring albums of my entire life, like records that I've listened to forever. And I think a lot of kids also miss the fact that we don't really digest and consume music in the same way, where you listen to it over and over and over again and kind of discover new things and new perspectives about these records every time you listen to it. Most people just listen to tracks and they skip through it in 3 points digitally on their computer. They listen to it for a matter of 8 seconds and I don't like it. Next. Oh yeah, I'll play that one. Oh yeah, you know, no one's spending enough time with music.
I really miss radio. Radio is something that made it exciting for me. So when Jeff Mills used to be on the radio and he would play Capricorn, I Need Love, man, I had to have that fucking record, you know, or if he played Alexander Robotnik, Problems Damn More, I had to have that record. So the only store in the area that had it was By-Right Records. This is where actually Kenny Dixon and Rick Wilhite and DJ Stingray, all those guys worked up there. And I remember Capricorn was an import. It came from Italy, and it was the vocal side on one side and the instrumental side on the other. And in 1985, 86, that record cost $25. And that was insane because records cost $5 at that time, you know? So it's just like, what the fuck? But, you know, every time Jeff was hammering it, and Jeff would play it for, you know, Jeff was playing tracks for 30 seconds, a minute, you know, something like that. But he was always taking the best parts. I knew I had to have that record. So yeah, you know, like Chris, I had to save up in order to get it. It was either gas and candy or get this record. And you know, I got the record, and I just hammered it. It was amazing. But you know, radio. I've always felt that it should be a community service because it's free and everybody could tune into it. But you know, it's seen as being such a corporate thing, and there's always been so much money in music that to make it a community project, I think is really difficult. And then now, you know, you have to like really search, like with internet radio or any of this stuff, you have to go, you know, all over the fucking internet to try to find things, do searches and whatever, and you can end up skipping or missing out on some really good shit because you're, you know, getting distracted by other shit that's popping up. Where radio, there was 20 stations or 25 stations or something like that. And you knew that there were 3 black stations, so you only jumped between those 3 black stations. You knew Jeff Mills was going to be on at 10:30, you know. The Electrifying Mojo was on at 10, you know. When Jeff was off, then Electrifying Mojo was still playing, so you could jump back to the Electrifying Mojo.
Were they on at the same time? Around the same time?
Yeah, they became competitors, yeah. And I never thought of them as competitors until Jeff told me that they were competitors.
And awesome. Out of everybody in that early scene in Detroit, was it Derek that you met first? Or who was it? Like what was that spark for you besides listening to Mojo and the Wizard?
That is a very interesting question, because I think we have a lot of young viewers. Maybe you can like sum up a little bit of the Detroit early history for us.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, Detroit was founded in 17 blah 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 blah.
I'm gonna get a beer then.
No, the interesting anecdotes and memories that
yes, and
that
it
you've
was
never
not
recounted in an interview before, maybe.
Yes, Detroit was not founded by Henry Ford, as some people might think.
No, I think what Ali was referring to was like, how did you Detroit legends, how did you meet for the first time? How did it all like come about, you know?
Yeah. So I met Jeff first. I met Jeff when I was about 14. And I was, and when I say Jeff, I mean Jeff Mills. My cousin Doug was friends with him, and my cousin Doug is kind of how I got into this, because he made Technicolor with Juan Atkins back in the day, and he was doing lights at a place called UBQ, and Jeff and him, because I think Jeff was DJing at UBQ and Doug would do the lights and stuff. And then Jeff was just starting out on the radio. I think I met him right before he got on the radio. And he was a big influence on me, not only because he was on the radio, but because I actually met the guy before he was on the radio and saw what he did. So I was going to nightclubs with Doug to help do lights. And like I said, I was 14, 15 years old, and you know, it was really amazing. But
so this is 86, 87?
No, this is 85, 84, 80. I was 14 in 83, so probably 84, I think. And after Jeff, Stingray and I have become friends from Byright. And we would always have these conversations. And Gerald Donald was really bad for doing this too. Not Ectomorph, but what was the group that he was? Shit, I forgot. But anyway, So me and Sherrod Stingray would be in the store. He'd be behind the counter, and we'd be talking. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I love Mayday. I love Mayday, man. Mayday, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, Kevin's hotter. Kevin makes better music. Master Reese, he's way better. Oh, yeah, we have this conversation. And one thing that he said that stuck with me for all these years was he said, man, the 808 is the future. The 808 is the future. And this is in 1987. He's like, 808 is the future. 808 is the future. I'm like, yeah, okay, 808 is sweet. I love 808 and stuff. But he's like, really, 808 is the future. And for sure, 808 became the motherfucking future of all the shit that we hear on the radio, all the shit that we hear. Everybody goes back to that 808 kick and that snappy ass snare and those little fucking mechanical hi-hats, and
yeah, Arthur Baker made a great documentary about the 808.
He did, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, the 808 I think was technically considered a flop when it came out. Yeah. But it was down. You got yours over there? Yeah. But it came down to black music to keep it alive, So whether it was Run DMC after they stopped using the DMX and stuff, all that Def Jam shit. LL Cool J and
SOS Band.
What's that?
SOS Band.
SOS Band. I think that was Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, and they used 808 like a motherfucker. Captain Rap. I Can't Stand It. That record just kills. 808 just kills on that record. I mean, that might be the baddest ass 808 produced record that I could think of, because when you play it on any system, that shit pops.
Yeah.
Ali, what was the documentary about the 808? People in the chat are asking.
I wish I could remember the name, but it was made by Arthur Baker. So if everybody wants to Google Arthur Baker and 808 documentary, you'll find out. I bumped into Arthur Baker at the Winter Music Conference many years ago, like I think maybe like 3 years before it came out, and he wanted to interview me for it, but I was like really wasted coming back from Ultra or something like that, and the thought of being interviewed at there was a party going on at the hotel as well, so trying to find a quiet area, completely wasted, and talking about the significance of the 808 and stuff. It just wasn't the right time, and then we never were able to reschedule it. But
sounds like the perfect time to me.
Amazing.
Tech Innova says 808 the movie. It's called
808 the movie. Yeah, nice and easy title.
By the way, guys, we're monitoring your chats, so you can ask questions if you want. We might answer them. I don't know.
Last year at ADE, I was having dinner, and I was sitting next to Arthur Baker the whole time, and I didn't realize that was him. Yeah. He just said, my name is Arthur, and we were just like chatting about whatever, music and real estate. He was talking about real estate, and then it wasn't until after, because he was sitting next to me, so I wasn't really looking at him. And then after we left, someone was like, "Dude, was that Arthur Baker?" And I was like, "What?" It's like having dinner with this guy and chatting with him. I had no idea that it was him. And I was like, "Oh my god," I felt so stupid.
That's like me sitting next to Quincy Jones on a flight in Europe. I think we were landing in Porto or something like that, or somewhere in Spain. And I had no idea that he was sitting next to me until, the captain came on and said, "Oh, we got to circle the airport because, it's really busy right now." And I started to put my stuff away. And then out of the corner of my eye, I kind of caught a glimpse of the scarf. I was always wearing the scarf. And I looked over, and it was Quincy. He looked at me, and then we just ended up talking for like 45 minutes. And that was a really surreal experience. Then I met him again when he was a speaker at IMS in LA. I think the next year or something. So yeah.
I had a similar situation with Blake Baxter one time at Record Time in Detroit. I was going through a bin of records, and he was standing right next to me, but I didn't really know what he looked like at the time. This was in 2000. Yeah, in 2000. And I pulled out a Blake Baxter record on Trezor, and I was looking at it, and we kind of caught eyes, and I was like, "Have you heard this before?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Is this a good record?" He's like, "Yeah, it's pretty good." Walked away. And like my friend was like, dude, you know that was Blake Baxter, right? I was like, oh fuck.
But you know, that's a typical Detroit thing to do, is to be like, it's cool, yeah, you know. I mean, Detroiters, we don't go all that's the baddest motherfucking shit you ever heard in your life. You better buy that. That's the shit.
Buy two copies.
I got something better right here for you.
You guys want to hear how I met Carl? Is I called the number that was on the 6ix9ine record, 4 Jazz Funk Classics.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
4 Jazz Funk Classics. Yeah, I just called the number.
When was that?
Like maybe Craig will answer. I don't know. Let's see.
That's a nice tribute to.
I called the number like after like 2 rings he picks up, and at first I didn't believe it was Carl, and then it ended up being him, and here we are nearly 30 years later.
30 years ago.
30 years, yeah, 1991.
It's a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, 1991 that album came out.
When people used to put phone numbers on the labels.
Yeah. Well, there's a real legendary story. I don't. Do you guys know Neuropolitique? Or I can't. Lee, what's his name? Lee Gaddis. Lee. He was on a label called Ear Dial, and then Neuropolitique I think might have came out on Ear Dial, but I'm sure it came out on Kirk DiGiorgio's label. But anyway. I'm over at Derek's. I think I was at Derek's by that time. But anyway, Derek gets a call from Kevin. Kevin's like, man, there's these 3 English motherfuckers over here, and they want to hang. But I don't have any time. I'm working on Inner City. So why don't they come over to your place? And this is what we used to call Techno Boulevard, which is Gratiot and Riopelle, where Juan's studio was downstairs, Derek's studio was upstairs, and then KMS was next door. KMS had almost a whole building to themselves. And he's like, okay, yeah, send them over. So these boys come over, and Matt Cogger, who was Neuropolitique, his father was a pilot or a flight attendant or something for BA. So he would get all these cheap tickets to places. So they looked at the KMS record that they had, and they saw the address on it, and they flew to Detroit and went to KMS and said, hey, we're here. And seriously, when they came to Derek's house, I think they stayed at Derek's house for 2 weeks. Derek didn't know these motherfuckers, and they just showed up at Kevin's, and then he accepts them next door, and then they just stayed. And stayed. And then Matt Cogger ended up actually working for Derek. So I think Matt was even in Detroit for about 2 or 3 years or something, just in Detroit, just became a fucking Detroiter. It's Detroit. And that was great about the time, you know, because you could see an address, because we were putting addresses on our records. Yeah. To make it seem like we were bigger than what we were, you know. So you see, like
I was gonna ask, random people showed up all the time to like everybody's businesses or label offices or studios.
You know, I know it happened all over that it did, but you know, I don't remember if anybody stopped. But I always put a PO box on my records so nobody could come by. That's what it was, right?
I did the same thing with the Advent, Cisco and Colin. Back in '94, I believe. I just went to Kensington and just went to their address. And I ended up sitting in their studio and just chatting all the time. That's how I met them. Because was on the record.
And is that how you started, or were you already doing stuff?
No, I was already kind of doing stuff, but I was really into, it must have been 94. Yeah, I started around 93 to do beats and stuff like that. But I was really like in 94, 95, got really into the Advent style of record and techno, you know. Yeah. And I was just a huge fan of Cisco and Colin. And it's just like, I so remember that day when I was sitting with them in the studio, and it was like this little dude from Germany sitting in that studio.
Yeah, right.
You know, but that was still possible back in these days. It's interesting. We sound like old people that really miss those old days.
Mm-hmm. People are like boomers, just a bunch of boomers.
Man,
Oh yeah, I forgot to say, Ali, Potbelly's rules. So don't worry about whatever the fuck anybody got to say about it. Yeah,
Okay.
Dad bod. They call it a dad bod.
Dad bod.
I kind of have this. Belly. I have this pressure that I feel that like when we come out of this situation and we start touring again, we all got to look like totally different, like leaner and like hopefully younger, like
then I'm losing on all fronts.
Complexion, clear skin.
Man, fuck that. I'm going to come out. I'm going to start wearing a priest outfit or something. I'm going to dress like a cleric.
Throwing holy water on people.
Yeah. You're saved, my son. You're saved. You're saved, my daughter. You're saved. Now go meet me over there.
Chris, what was when you were in Germany in those days of like early Detroit techno scene? What was the vibe and the reaction to all that insane music coming out of Detroit? Like what was the record that did it for you, or when were you hooked?
Who are you asking?
You.
Oh, me?
You're the only European here.
I'm the only European here. It's an interesting question, which because I'm from Frankfurt and I'm near Frankfurt, and we always considered ourselves to be the birthplace of techno.
Oh shit!
Fuck you guys!
Damn!
I can't wait to see the Twitter
fighting words, man.
And I know we weren't. Let's spread it out. There was many birthplaces of techno. Maybe the first one was Detroit, and it came over. But it's all connected. It's all very much connected. I think, especially because of Dimitri Hegemann and Tresor, he did so much for getting all these international artists, especially from Detroit, over, so we could go and see him, hear them play. And that influenced us again in doing what we were doing. But from my point of view, it was always like the Detroit type of techno was always a little bit more on the melodic side. Carl, correct me if I'm completely wrong here. While we were more a little bit on the industrial kind of side and more of the machinery beats. And I'm sure you're all aware of the early sound of Frankfurt. And we talked about it on this show with the passing of Pascal Fios. And what Frankfurt basically meant for the techno scene, though there was always this competition going on between Frankfurt and Berlin, while Berlin was obviously growing much faster and much bigger, especially because of the fall of the wall. Then there were so many more opportunities in Berlin to host parties and for Dimitri to find venues like the Tresor and UFO and other places. And it was heavily, I mean, the Berlin techno scene was in that way heavily influenced by the Detroit techno scene, while the Frankfurt techno scene was a little bit on its own here. But we were pretty strong. I'm saying we, I was just a little kid at that time. But the Frankfurt scene was pretty strong at that time and didn't have that many venues to invite that many artists. So we were a little bit on our own with this. But my early influences probably come out of this area of Detroit, Berlin, but not in a direct way, more in an indirect way. And as I said, just for example, The Advent, I'm sure that Colin was heavily influenced by Detroit techno as well. And I jumped on.
Cisco released on Fragile, which was a division of Transmat.
That's Cisco.
Yeah, Cisco did.
Yeah. So Cisco.
Yeah, Cisco.
We knew Cisco in 92 or something. So yeah, Cisco Ferreira, he first released records on RNS.
Right. Yeah, he was an engineer actually for CJ Bolland in the beginning. You know?
Yeah.
That's how he got started.
Yeah. But the thing about melodic, yeah, Detroit definitely had more songs where we felt that we could venture out as far as sound was concerned, because we were definitely influenced by Blade Runner. I mean, that was a big deal. Me and Derek would sit on the floor with all these synthesizers surrounding us, you know, discussing the concept of you know, being a composer for film, and you know, being able to have the opportunity to do something for a film like Blade Runner. So that was definitely in our minds, and I'm talking like 1989, before me and Derek went to England to play. So yeah, definitely. And you know, maybe you guys had an influence that was coming from a holdover from New Beat, you know, Front 242 and all that Belgian stuff that was coming out around that time, because you know, by the time RNS was putting out Derek's record, so they put out Our Time, and they put out something else that I can't remember. They put out my Psych record, as well as some other things. So you know, it was really interesting thinking back about it, for us being from Detroit and releasing music on a Belgian label when we were in the industrial as well. We were in the Front 242, which was a Belgian group, you know, that was technically copying Chicago, you know, when they started putting a straight foot in their stuff, you know. So that Chicago thing, which for them, Front 242 doing that, probably influenced the direction where Wax Trax Records, which was their label in the United States, was going, because Wax Trax pretty much thought that house music was bullshit. It was just a bunch of black music, and they didn't really give a fuck about it. You know, the only thing that they put out that was even in that realm was Native Love from Divine. And you know, this we can go into a whole racial thing in the US, especially at the time, that division that was going on between black and white music. You know, there was a club here in Detroit that I used to go to called The Shelter. And in The Shelter, I remember that, you know, I would go down to see this guy, Reggie. I can't remember Reggie's last name, but Reggie was playing Ballroom Blitz. And Reggie was this little, really dark-skinned guy with pressed hair, pulled back. But Reggie was a badass motherfucking DJ. He was maybe one of the most underrated DJs from Detroit, just badass DJ. And he was playing Ballroom Blitz, and he was playing, you know, all that kind of shit that all the goths wanted to hear. And then at, I think it was 11 o'clock or midnight, he started playing house music. And he would start playing, you know, Can You Feel It? And he was playing Farley, funking the drums, and he was playing all this stuff. And slowly, it became where I wasn't the only black guy outside of the DJ that was in the club. Slowly, there started to be more black people that were coming into the club. And I was looking at this kind of shocked, but I was really happy about it, because it seemed like there was going to be some more shit that was going on. And sure enough, after that started happening, they started putting ads in the local paper, no house music for this club, and they stopped playing house music. And I think it was specifically because there were more black people that were coming to the club, and there was that division that was going on. And the same thing, like I was talking about Wax Trax, was that Wax Trax, they really were turning their back on this Chicago bred music, because it was black music. You know, it wasn't that it wasn't fitting into, and Chicago's really racially divided. It was really racially divided in comparison to Detroit, you know, just really nasty politics that came around it. So, you know, we're talking now about how, you know, people are posting how, you know, techno is black music and house music is black music and all that stuff. And it's a shame that we have to even get to that point where people are tweeting or are posting about this kind of shit, because I've already been through this bullshit back in 1986, 87, and it's really ridiculous. It's crazy. I mean, you know, the history has to be known. Everybody has to pay attention to the history, and we can't just say, you know, that's just like saying Marvin Gaye, What's Going On was a pop record. You know, no, it was a fucking protest record. If anybody says Marvin Gaye, What's Going On was a pop record, then they need to be beat upside of the fucking head, you know, because that music was a protest record. And it's the same.
He was at Four Tops. He was at Four Tops and seeing some. No, he was seeing some police brutality out of the window of the bus he was on, and he gave that track to his friend at the Four Tops to sing it. They didn't want to sing it, so he did it, right? And that's and then it became this big hit, and it was about like what's going on, actually what's going on right now. That's the title.
Exactly.
And at what point in Detroit was when techno started becoming more political, and what was the reason?
I think techno was probably more political from the beginning, the early stages of it. I mean, you know, you had
I think with Mike and UR and that whole movement,
resistance.
Yeah, you had you know, stuff that Eddie Fowlkes and Suburban Night and Blake and all those guys are doing, but definitely Mike and Jeff had that angle to make it. They wanted Mike's, and you could ask Mike about it now. They basically wanted to be the techno Public Enemy.
Yeah. And when you think about it, techno music in its evolution and history globally wasn't very political, or am I wrong? It was really underground resistance who came out like Public Enemy, you know?
I think you would hear more of the political aspect of it from the interviews. So Derek and Kevin and Juan were getting all these interviews and stuff, but Derek was the one out with his loud ass mouth just saying whatever he wanted to, but he was like on point about a lot of the things that he was saying. So, you know, it might not have been in the titles of the music, but it was definitely revolution and protest in the ideas.
Into the music and ideas.
Definitely. Yeah, because the reason why we know that underground resistance was political was because of the titles and their manifesto, what they had to say about it. But you didn't hear so much lyrics in it. So you couldn't really put on an underground resistance record today and it says lyrically the same thing that Chuck D was saying with Rebel Without a Pause or any of that kind of stuff, you know?
Mike is a fascinating guy.
Yeah, he is. Definitely.
I remember we hung out at it's a festival in Crans, Montana in April.
Okay.
I can't remember. And you and Mike, and was it just you and Mike? You were doing a performance. Mike was playing keyboards.
Yeah.
Derek was there too. I think Stacy might have been there. It was like legend.
Yeah, Mike is an incredible person. He's you know, I think that his absolute love is cars. Yeah. So music was something that he was doing, but it always seemed like cars was his thing. And that's a very Detroit thing. It's like car, you know, when you see Omar S, the same thing. He's like about racing. He's about cars and stuff. And Mike, to me, not only as an individual is incredible, but his musicianship is quite amazing, and how he delved into the 303, for instance, those early underground resistance tracks where he was using 303 in such a melodic way. You know, the bass lines went, you know, just it was like techno jazz for real, how he was programming the 303. It wasn't, you know, just programming a 2-beat or a 4-beat sequence and then turning the resonance and you know, like freaking out the knobs and stuff. It was like really he was composing on the 303, and I haven't heard anybody do what Mike Banks has done with that instrument. And I think that we're still not to a point where somebody is going to come back to it in that way, unless post-COVID, people decide to do things a bit more elaborately in comparison to just taking a plug-in and push and start and boom. There you go. That's my 303. We need a 303 on there, so that's my 303.
I mean, just going back to what we were talking about earlier about like vinyl and having that physical product. I mean, you have all those. I mean, all the labels that I would collect. With every one that had every record that had 313 area code, I would buy and collect. And the Underground Resistance records, in particular, with the artwork, like the packaging, the manifesto, the music. Some of the unique qualities of like the inside out mastering from time to time, and the ideas, the musical ideas that were there. It was really, really, I mean, I'm struggling to find an equivalent today that gives you that same feeling and that same connection to a piece of music, a physical product,
that mastering, I'm sorry to cut you off, but that mastering was important to the mystique of Detroit records, definitely. So, much respect to Ron Murphy for that, because, some people were collecting records just if it had his NSC logo on it. They had to have it, And
I used to love seeing that NSC etched into the
right.
part of the record,
And
National Sound Detroit, for everyone that's wondering what that is.
Yeah, National Sound. And Ron was a funny guy. So Ron, he had a belly on him and his arms were kind of short. And hey man, yeah, that's real hot. I'm really hot, and that was his thing, It was just like, hey, yeah. Oh, it's got too much high end in it. Or, oh yeah, we could do this or whatever. And he had like hi-fi equipment that you would get at, a typical appliance store. We had one called Highland Appliance, and they sold hi-fi gear, but it was like graphic EQs and stuff, no compressors, no whatever. And what Ron did with that gear, this cheap gear, like I had done a remix for some people and they said, where should we master it? And I sent them over to National Sound, and they came back, man, we mixed on the SSL. There ain't no way we're going to have this guy master on this bullshit. They came back like that. But Ron, it was proof positive that it didn't matter what you had. It mattered how you used it. Kind of like what is it about sex? It's not about the size, it's about the motion in the ocean, that kind of thing. And Ron, he had an old Scully mastering lathe, like from the 50s or something.
Yeah.
And that's why he could cut records backwards was because the newer machines with computers, so the newer Neumann machines at the time that were costing, $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 or whatever, they couldn't cut in the same way that Ron could do it. And like the Underground Resistance Rings of Saturn, I mean, impossible for you to do with anything else but being able to do it manually. And they sat there and they discussed what the BPM would be at a certain point in the record for it to loop correctly. Yeah. So they did the math along with Ron being able to physically move his cutting head to the point to be able to do it correctly. And Ron, he was a cutting engineer, not a mastering engineer. He was a cutting engineer at Motown. So what a cutting engineer did was you gave him a tape and he cut it. And what his job was to do was to take EQ out, not to add shit. His thing was to cut it out. So if it had too much high end, you pull the high end down. If there's too much low end, you pull the low end down. You make sure that when you cut it, the groove got deep enough so that when the needle hit it, that you could play it on any system. You could play it on a bullshit little, you know, K-Tel record player or something, or you could play it on, you know, a Thorin's 930 or whatever the number is on that with some type of crazy, you know, moving coil cartridge. So that was his job, was making sure that it cut with no problems. And he was able to do, like, if you listen to Nights of the Jaguar, especially the original cut of Nights of the Jaguar, I don't even think he could recreate it. That shit was cut so incredibly. It was amazing. Ron, I mean, I might make fun of how he was, but he was a fucking master at that shit.
There was one UR record. I think it was on their Hard Wax label, and you had, like, the song was there, and then there was like this groove that was cut that was really wide, and it was like a sound effect that maybe, if I remember correctly, it went into a lock groove, or went into a part 2 of the song, or a second separate section or something. And when you look at it move like that across the record, and jump to that next section, it was wild. You know? Back then, I used to play with the crowds, like literally just hunched over.
What is that?
Over the decks, like, and I used to love putting the needle down in the middle of the record. And you know, everybody would be watching, like, what the fuck's he doing? Like, what's gonna happen? They'd watch it go the other way, you know, and they'd be blown away.
Ron was never
what was the first record that had that, or who?
I don't know the record, but Hard Wax was Robert Hood's label.
Ah, it was, okay.
Yeah, and a great thing about Ron was that he never made it feel like you were wasting his time.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, he had work to do, but I would be in there sometimes for 5 fucking hours with this guy. And, you know, you couldn't shut his ass up. But I was learning so much because, you know, my master should have probably taken 2 hours or something, but he's showing me how the groove looks in the magnifying glass or the microscope. You know, he's telling me about making sure that things are in phase when you're cutting, because with his machine, if you had wires crossed on something and it was prominent in the track, that it wouldn't cut. The head would not be able to go deep enough, because he didn't have a cutting computer like with Neumann's. With Neumann's, you could fix it, no problem. But with the Scully, you couldn't do it. You had to go deeper. You had to make sure you went deeper at certain points. So he'd sit there with the corks, you know, this thing that corkscrews, like you're starting up an engine or something, making it go deeper or trying to get it to be a little less or however he had to do in order to cut that fucking record. And it was really beautiful. You know, to come back to think about it, that, you know, this guy spent so much time with all of us, with Derek, with Juan, with Kevin, me, you know, that, and Mike utilized it to the maximum, because Mike was getting everything cut by Ron.
Having come from Motown, did he get a sense did he enjoy the music that you guys were giving him to cut? And
he'd tell us if it was a hit or not.
You guys were the new Motown?
No,
you know, so no. He didn't feel that way about it, right?
I don't think he felt like we were the new Motown, but he'll tell you if he thought something was a hit. So that was cool, but, you know, he, like I said, he never made it feel like he was like we were wasting his time. So he wouldn't, you know, say like, "What's this bullshit you bringing in here?" You know, take this shit out. He'll walk you through the process, and it was cool. Good guy.
But it was such a beautiful process to cut records and to be actually attending cutting records. I used to fly over to London to see Niels at the Exchange cutting the record. Right? Yeah. You remember Niels at the Exchange? Sadly, he passed away some years ago. And it was just another like vinyl related beautiful process just to sit there and just to see the whole technology behind it and get it explained and see everything, how your actual sound transmits or transfers into a cutting groove. It was just a really beautiful process.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. Did you guys ever see that video with Jeff Mills where he's looking at a record and he's telling you what's on the record without hearing it just by looking at the grooves?
No.
No, never seen it.
Yeah.
It sounds like a joke.
No, it's not a joke. Actually, it's real funny because he's looking at, because you can tell when grooves don't have a beat.
Yeah,
because they're lighter.
Darker. No,
so he's going through and he's like, yeah, well, here there's a break here. You can tell it's a break, and then here, the drums come back in here, and then here it is doing this or whatever. And it's real fun. It's really interesting, but it's quite funny to see him do it, because in typical Jeff Mills form.
What's that one Jeff Mills record where when you lift the needle, a different song plays on the same side?
Oh,
I don't even know how they.
It's a 7-inch
parallel to each other.
No, it's a 12-inch. But yeah,
it was cut parallel, right?
Yeah, parallel cut. Yeah.
That's so crazy. How do they even do that?
Yeah, Ron on Neumann's you could do it with a computer. Ron did it by hand.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So I don't know how many lacquers he went through trying to get it right, but but he did it by hand though, with his little Highland appliance EQs and stuff.
That's something that's possible to do now with digital technology, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think
I've ever seen that. And
I don't think a lot of mastering engineers want to put the time in to do it, but it's the time correction computer on the Neumanns that you could actually set it up. You have to cut the grooves further apart, and then you can actually fit them both in on one end, but you get less playing time on the track itself as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so you can't do, especially at level. So if you want a good level out of a record, you have to have it about 7 minutes, I think, if you want like a really hot record.
Yeah.
So probably you'd have to half that to put 2 tracks, that parallel groove. You have to do each track at about 3 minutes in order to have it at a loud level, like a seriously loud level. Otherwise, like you'd never be able to do 15 minutes on the side in parallel groove without it feedbacking and doing all kinds of stuff,
Yeah. You could do a lot of, like, I had one record which was kind of like my kind of breakthrough record in '97 on my own label, and I was sitting with Neil in the studio when he was cutting the record, and in the break I wanted him to, just before the break, so the needle would go a little faster for just one round, and you just had to tell him in the right moment, just do it now, and then he would be just like dialing a knob, and the needle would be going. So the original cut still has this thing in the middle where you could do all these games with it. It was really amazing process, actually. Yeah. But we need to go to some viewers' questions here. I saw a good one. How did you producers back in the early '90s in Detroit react to Richie Hawtin's music and his personality when he came up? That is a question by Dennis Punch.
All right.
Dennis.
Oh, you know.
I know Dennis.
What?
Rich, when he came on the scene, we knew him as DJ first. He's a DJ with a guy named Scott Gogo Gordon. They used to play at Shelter, actually. And Rich and Scott were, I would say, they were disciples of Jeff, of the Wizard, because their styles, DJing, was very, very much like Jeff Mills' early style of DJing, scratching and cutting and all that kind of stuff. So, I always knew what he was playing in that sense, but I didn't realize what it would become. So, when he did +8, and I actually formally met him with Kenny Larkin, because Kenny Larkin's first EP was coming out, or was out at the same time. I was doing a radio show in Windsor called C-Jam. Radio station was called C-Jam, and he and Kenny came by, and I don't know if John Aquaviva came by at the time, but I didn't see what Rich was doing as being anything other than a compliment to what we were already doing in Detroit. Yeah, of course, you know, in Detroit, we're always talking shit about people. And, you know, that's a common thing for us to do. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from or whatever. But, you know, from his excitement, but also from what he was able to do production wise, you know, him and Dan Bell, what they were doing. Right. It was Cybersonic and that kind of stuff. I mean, we were playing those records, and it was definitely a companion to what was going on. Of course, there were politics that started popping up and this, that, and the other. But Rich, and maybe one of the best things that happened to Rich was when he had a problem getting into the United States. Because Rich ended up becoming very big on the rave scene in the United States after he did Sheet One, and he had some problem with immigration for a long time.
Maybe we have to explain to some people that there is Detroit, and then there's a river, what is the river?
Yeah, the Detroit River.
The Detroit River, and then there's Windsor, and Richie comes from Windsor, and Windsor is in Canada.
It is in Canada, yeah, and Richie is not black. If you didn't know, since we have to get specific, that Henry Ford did not found Detroit. No. So anyway. So I think one of the best things that happened to Rich was that instead of coming to the US, he started going to Germany and started hanging out with Sven, and he, I think, became maybe a bigger star from that direction than if he would have stayed in the US and racing. You know, right. So what seemed like it could have been unfortunate for him not to be able to come back to the U.S. for a while. He had thought it for a while, but he came to Europe. That it really exploded his career a lot more than I think it would have if he would stayed around the U.S.
I had a similar perspective on it as well. As soon as they went over to do the Cocoon stuff and everything, there was a significant growth in his brand and his name.
Carl, what was your first, and do you remember it? Was there anything special about your first trip abroad, and where you played? Was it Germany or was it UK?
No. So my first time to Europe was to London in 1989, and that was you remember? Huh?
That was their Summer of Love, like Acid House.
Summer of Love, right? Yeah. So you remember I was talking about me and Derek on the floor with all the synthesizers around us playing and talking about Blade Runner. We were rehearsing for our Rhythm is Rhythm show to go to London to open for Inner City in '89. So that was the first time that I went over, and you know I was hooked. It was amazing. You know, so that was the first time as a performer going on, but the first time as a DJ was at Cafe d'Anvers in Ghent or in Antwerp.
Wow, Cafe d'Anvers, which is
and
it closed recently, right? Or is it still open?
I played there about a year and a half ago, and it was open. Yeah, and you know. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I think the nicest looking out of all the red light districts, they have the best looking displays. Yes. When we're on the road, these are the things that we pay attention to, you know?
Well, I mean, Anvers is literally, it's in the red light. It's like,
yeah, it is right in the red light. Yes,
that's why. In case people are wondering. And was like, did you dream of going to Europe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had. Yeah. And was it you thought? Or what? Like, did it start a love affair with all things European? And did you end up spending more time there?
I was really influenced by Kraftwerk. And my early demos, I used to talk about being able to drive on Autobahn and stuff like that, you know. So my uncle had gone over in the 80s, and he came back and told me some things about what was going on. And of course, you know, in a sense of just going to Germany, not musically. Yeah. And I put that along with me listening to, you know, everything Kraftwerk. And it was yeah. So I was supremely excited to come to Europe. And England was a big deal for me because I was a fan of Human League and, you know, Tears for Fears and the Smiths, as I had talked about before, and I listened to all that music. So it was a big deal for me. But
did you dress new wave or no?
Huh?
Did you dress new wave?
I used to love all that new wave shit, but no, I didn't. I tried to get. I lived new wave through my brother. My brother's 9 years older than me, and he used to have all that kind of new wave shit, and I used to love it. You know, so I don't know what happened to a lot of that stuff because I used to try to wear it, but he never handed it down to me. So unfortunately, I didn't go. I should have got a pressing curl. I should have had a perm or something in my hair and just went all like Steve Strange, wear makeup and shit.
There's got to be like that definitive photo of you from that era. That
no, you won't find one. No. The only thing that's close to that is me and Derek wearing biker shorts in the photo. Muscle tees and biker shorts.
You posted a lot of old photos recently on your Instagram. What year was that all from?
Around Interzone Orchestra, so 90, 96, 97, something like that.
That's an interesting one that we can talk about, because Bug in the Bass Bin, for a lot of the younger fans that may not know this, which came out in 96 on James Lavelle's Mowax label, was in many ways the inspiration of drum and bass, and kind of the blueprint. It laid the kind of blueprint for drum and bass, because guys like Groove Rider and Fabio and stuff, you know, all the kind of hardcore DJs around that time started to play that record at 45 RPM, right?
Right. Well, James, it didn't come out on James's label until later.
Okay.
It came out on Planet E first, on gray marble vinyl, and a compilation called Intergalactic Beats. And before I knew that Fabio and Groove Rider were playing it, my boy in Amsterdam, DJ Dimitri, was playing it at Roxy Club. And it was a big, big record at Roxy Club. And he was playing it at +8, all the way up. But to play it at 45, I hadn't heard it before. And when I found out about it, because I knew Fabio a little bit, but I didn't really see Fabio so much. And I didn't know Groove Rider at the time. But I was, because Bug in the Bass Bin came out right before Land Cruising, or a bit before Land Cruising. And I was doing some press for Land Cruising. I was sitting in Kojo Eshon's apartment, and he's like, "You have to listen to this." And he played me Timeless from Goldie. And he's like, "This is directly influenced by Bug in the Bass Bin." And I heard it and I thought it was amazing, but I didn't really hear it, because what they were doing with Bug in the Bass Bin, it's a loop that is relentless from beginning to end. I mean, it only breaks for like a second, you know, maybe a bar and it's a 12-minute track. So it's just relentless what it's doing. And with how they were cutting beats, how Goldie and Digo and then later with Ronnie Size and those guys, how they were cutting up beats was more of a collage in the way. But it was really when Goldie kind of explained to me how he was hearing it, it's like, okay, I really hear it now, because Fabio was mixing the track in at like 140 BPM or whatever it was that they were playing the tracks at the time in the rave days, and he was hearing what was dun 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 dun. He was hearing it like dun 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 dun. He was hearing like at that speed where the notes maybe sounded like they were stopping where they weren't stopping, because the beat would come further into it. And maybe there was a hard compressor on the system. So the compressor might have did a lot in order to it, but it just, it took his imagination and made it go wild. And then
or it could have been really good ecstasy.
Huh?
It could have been really good ecstasy too one night when the first time you heard it.
With Goldie, I mean, because Goldie's out there. He's like a real direct cat, but Goldie, he might have like a thing that's happening in his head that he doesn't even need no fucking ecstasy.
I can chime in with a viewer's question. The user X101 is asking. That's good.
What? That's an Underground Resistance record.
I know, he's calling himself like that. Can you ask Carl about producing Land Cruising? How long did it take, and what synths did you use?
Land Cruising was, I don't know. I think it was over a few months that I was doing Land Cruising. And I remember specifically I was living in an apartment where the neighbor would always get upset with me because I had the speakers against the wall and we shared a wall. So so he was always getting upset with me about playing too loud. And we actually ended up getting evicted. My brother and I lived in that apartment, and we actually got evicted because his music, they couldn't find where it was coming from. So after 2 years of them kicking other people out of the building, they found out that it was actually him. So anyway, the synths that I used at the time, I think I was using a Korg DS5 and a 101, and of course SH10. SH101. I'm sorry, I was thinking of another one when I said that. Juno 106. But the main key to much of what I did around that time was that I probably was still using an Alesis MMT8 sequencer, which was amazing because it was 8 channels, but you could mix live with MMT8, and I use that on the Psych BFC stuff. So like From Beyond, that's like MMT8, and then also I was using HR16, which was also a really amazing instrument because when I did From Beyond, which isn't on that album, but when I did From Beyond, I was using a MIDI 808, and I was triggering the 808 from the HR16, so it actually swung the fuck out of the 808. It was just, where you could never do anything like that on an 808. You could barely do it on a 909, but you could MIDI it, trigger it by MIDI. So yeah, the 101, the Juno 106, the DS5 or DS something from Korg, which is great. And then I had this thing where I have no idea where it is, but Roland made a machine that was these soft buttons that were chords. So you push the soft button and it would play a C chord or a C major or C minor or whatever. So you push the note that you want to play, and then you push the kind of chord that you want to play. So if it's the diminished chord or whatever, then it would play these chords. So I could sit there and push a note and then play chords from it. And it was interesting because my abilities as a keyboard player, I can play chords and I can compose, but there's some chords that are outside of my realm because I taught myself how to play chords on keyboard from sitting there with guitar and then transposing, you know, what I was playing on guitar to what I was playing on the keyboard. So if you hear how I play on the keyboard, I probably sound more like somebody who is a guitar player than somebody who learned how to play as a pianist. Mm-hmm. So those were really important pieces at the time. I'm sure I had something else. Oh, and Akai S1100. That was my main deal for a long time. I made so many of my records on an Akai S1100 before I bought my MPC 3000.
So you were a big fan of a lot of the Elisa stuff then, huh?
I wasn't a big fan of the Elisa stuff. No, that was what I could afford. Mm. And then I just learned it from top to bottom, beginning to end. I remember that Mike Huckabee used to call me up all the time, like, man, how do I use this? What do I do in order to use this? And I would like go from beginning to end. We've been on the phone for hours with me explaining to him how that sequencer worked or how he was supposed to use a drum machine or whatever, you know? And that was cool. That was also a cool thing about us in Detroit was that, you know, we tried to help each other. So if anybody like with me working with Derek, if there was a synth that we needed to use, we went down to Kevin's studio and would grab it and bring it upstairs. Or we went down to Juan's studio and grab it. And it was the same thing with them. Oh, we need a Mirage. So they grabbed the Mirage from Derek and then go over and use it at Kevin's studio. So there was always this world of everyone like exchanging instruments and hearing things. And you know, you get 909 from somebody and it'll have, you know, somebody else's pattern in it. It's like, oh yeah, fuck it. This pattern's great. You know, and we're just doing all this stuff. So from me coming into the game with that experience, with borrowing gear from each other, then it was a no-brainer for me to, if somebody called and asked for a tutorial or whatever, it was a no-brainer for me to do it because we were so used to helping each other out.
Yeah. Actually, I have a question about the unity in Detroit, but first there's a good question that comes into this one by Alistair Rennie is like, can Carl speak a bit about the houseier side of Detroit? Omar S., Marcellus P., Rick White, Willett? I don't know.
Yeah, Rick White, yeah.
Kenny D., Mike Huckabee, of course.
Yeah. I mean, the housey side of Detroit music was actually MK. That's where it started. MK and Shade Emye and Alton Miller, you know, guys like that were, you know, all that Shay and Trent stuff that was coming out. Man, that shit was amazing. You know, what MK was doing, you know, when he made Burning and you know, before he went to New York and you know, I mean, he Feel the Fire and all, man, he was doing some shit. And the thing about MK that was amazing was that he was making all this great house music, but he was the biggest Depeche Mode fan you'd ever come across in your life. He's a huge Depeche Mode fan, but he was making all this music that was like no Depeche Mode. I couldn't hear any Depeche Mode in it. But the real revolution that started was when Moody Man started doing his music along with Theo Parrish. You know, Lakeshore Drive. That was a big track that was on Mahogany. Just you know, those guys just kicked in the door and took hostages. And you know, Detroit Beat Down, Mike Clark, you know, there's just an amazing history that comes from it. And if you talk to guys like John Collins, Techno wasn't supposed to be called Techno. It was supposed to be called Detroit House or something, Detroit Soul or something like that. But
I mean, a lot of the music you couldn't neatly put in a category. It had characteristics of deep house, of house, of techno, of new wave, and that was the beauty of it for me. It was really like it sounded exotic and it spoke to me because of all the individual influences that I could kind of make out.
Right.
Know?
You've just touched on it. Have you always had that unity in Detroit, or were there different fractions at some point when which maybe hated each other or fought each other? And how was it when some of you got more and more famous and got bookings, sort of international bookings, and some others didn't? How did that go about?
Detroit guys, there's some haters in Detroit. You know, there's haters in every city. There's haters in every scene. That's just what happens. And some of the haters actually were making records. And they were making good records, but you know, they were able to hate on people and maybe get inspiration from the hate or something to make good records. And you know, we have some really excellent DJs that have come from Detroit, but the reality is that no matter how good you are, if people don't know, you know, what you represent or know your quality or even know anything about your music, then you're not going to get booked. I mean, that's the business of the whole thing. It's down to a promoter who's really on his shit, and the promoter says, "Man, I heard this fascinating record that came from Detroit, and I got to have this guy," you know, and you know, timing is really, really major important. You know, the hating goes back, you know, a lot of millennia in human history. But you know, with every great scene, there's always going to be a number of people that just don't understand why you got to go and they didn't. You know, or why they were only there once, but you can go there 100 times or something. It's always going to be that. But sometimes, you know, you just play off the hate. And when Derek and I were upstairs at Transmat and KMS was downstairs and next door Metroplex was downstairs, we would have these basketball competitions or football competitions and stuff. And there was always, you know, you always shit talk when you're playing these games and stuff. But sometimes you know that there's some deeper shit that's in there. And it's just like, okay, yeah, I know I know where that shit is coming from. That shit is coming from straight down in a motherfucker's bowels when they're gonna come out and say some shit like that. It's like, no, that's not like healthy competition. That motherfucker hates me, you know.
Yeah.
So,
that was real.
That was real. That was real.
So how do you feel about the current success of techno, what it's considered now compared to what you really know techno to be? Like, it's obviously become super, I guess, mainstream and popular, and it's wildly different than techno, you know, first came from. What do you think about that these days with techno?
I mean, everybody wants a hit. You know, a hit can buy you a Ferrari. A hit can be your retirement. A hit could be anything. But our aspect of having a hit at the time was you know, with Inner City, and the great thing about what Kevin was doing was that, yes, he would make these records that were radio records, whether it's Good Life, Big Fun. I mean, Good Life, Big Fun didn't start off as a radio record. It just started off as a record that they made, and it became a hit. And then Good Life was follow up. Our Forest was really integral in the writing of that and production and stuff, which is really important. But Kev was involved in these big hits, but he was making all this other shit too. Like, just, the recent Santonio stuff that he had done before, or, his early track Triangle of Love. I think that might've been the first one they did with Paris Gray, down to, these
funky
just
funk,
really,
that was
what's
broad. Industrial funky funk and
yeah, industrial. Yeah. Funky funk. Yeah. I mean, just hard shit, just hard ass shit. And I don't think people look at the art in the same way as it was before, where you made something, but you had another outlet, and you would try to have these other outlets and stuff. And we were all big fans of Prince, and we were all big fans of George Clinton. So George was the first one in our world that was doing Parliament and Funkadelic and Brides of Funkenstein and Zap and Bootsy Collins and all that stuff. So we all knew it were productions from him, in the same way that James Brown had the JBs and he had Lynn Collins and all that kind of stuff. But, it was like, fuck, One Nation Under a Groove and Flashlight and More Bounce to the Ounce and all this stuff. It was like, oh man. So we were influenced by that to have diversity, or, with Prince, having Prince records, but he had the Time. He had Vanity 6, he had The Family, he had, all these Sheila E., and he had all these, and you can even go to Rick James, because Rick James had his thing, and Tina Marie and the Mary Jane Girls and all that. So it was really a big influence for us to do music that was outside of the scope of really what we might have been known as, and just keep pushing the boundaries.
But I never felt that you were trying to make a hit with any of the, I mean, you were Inner Zone, you were Psych, BFC, 6ix9ine, Paperclip People. But I never got the feeling that you wanted to be like, to have like a hit like Inner City did with like Big Fun.
No, never.
You never went that down that road.
No, I like to be that unassuming cat, so I like the idea of just stumbling across something that becomes something more than I thought it was, because that way I keep it real. That way I'm not chasing the dollars. I'm not trying to follow up shit with another hit, because I couldn't write a fucking hit to save my life. If I tried, I can't. I can't write a record like Good Life or Big Fun. It's not in me. That's not how I think. That's not how I feel. That's not how I vibe. I vibe on shit that when I hit something, then I go on that stride. My brother talks about that runner's high, which I can never hit when I'm running, is that you get this high dose of oxygen that comes to you, and it just makes you where you never want to stop. I get that when I'm making my kind of music, but I can never do that with making a pop record. It's just not possible. Hey, hold on a second.
Might be a toilet break, or he's grabbing a record or something.
Somebody just called us DJs and Beards.
Yeah, I saw that too.
That works for me.
Well, I've had a
Hey guys, I'm so sorry for all those who are watching and sending questions. We're so amazed by the stories that Carl is telling. I rarely want to interrupt him somehow.
No, just let him. He's getting
the beard growth seems to be going well.
How funny would it be if Carl actually never comes back?
Cheers.
Hey, everyone watching. Thanks for watching, by the way. This is a cheers for you. I hope you're all doing well out there and you're still healthy.
This is like a cool can art on this beer. It's called No Comply.
I'm still supporting you, California guys, here with my...
Was that a California Ale like last time? Well, from the other one?
Like last time. I really like it. I really like the bottles they do here. And it's a small brewery here in Frankfurt. It's really nice. Braustier. Go there and get one if you're in Frankfurt.
Braustier.
Chris, how long did you play on your last stream?
Say what?
How long did you play on your last stream?
Oh,
Me, I just a little more than 8 hours, I believe. You can find it on YouTube.
On his channel.
Indeed, we can.
I still didn't manage to get it into one thing. I got interrupted like 3 times because taken down basically. So it's 3 different videos.
Has anybody else been monitoring the questions? I tried, but the chat.
I'm actually doing it, and I see a lot of complaints that we're not monitoring the questions. I'm so sorry. We really need to get this thing sorted a little better in the future again. Yeah. But then again, guys, we're DJs and Beers. What do you expect of us?
Yeah,
just true. Talking and drinking beers. I mean, we're not really a super well-produced show here. We're not. So.
And right? A lot of the questions, I noticed a lot of the questions are stuff that we've answered in past shows and just kind of like, okay, we really don't want to visit that again.
Yeah.
Yo.
What up, dude?
For a sec there, I was thinking you weren't ever going to come back. You were just sitting here waiting.
The outhouse was occupied.
Ah, yeah. Oh. No, the bathroom break is perfectly acceptable on DJs and Beers.
Carl, we usually try to keep that show to 2 hours, and I'm sure we could talk with you like another 10 hours. It's so amazing to listen to all your stories. It's absolutely amazing. From my point of view, we could keep going forever. But I'll just for once I'd like to venture out because I really have a question to you. When you see which is not really music related now, is that okay if I do that, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. How the protests that are going on now, especially in the U.S., but essentially worldwide, do you see there's a different dynamic behind it than it used to be? Is there a change? Is there seriously a change going on now?
A change in
consciousness in the people.
Oh.
When it comes to race-related matters and stuff like this. Let's put it that way. I can frame the question a little bit more. I have to tell you from my point of view, I've been traveling to the US quite a lot in my life, and I've always idolized the United States in a way, because when you grow up in Germany, you grow up with all these television series that come from California, you're really influenced into this kind of lifestyle. And I've always had something for the US, and I love to be in LA, and these guys know that. And I wasn't aware. I have to honestly, I'm surprised in the last 4 weeks, and this is why I think it feels different now. The whole protests, especially to see there's a lot of white people protesting now too. And I feel like when it comes from me, from a German perspective, here's growing up in Germany, it's like we don't really have any race issues here. And I'm so surprised to see the scope of the systemic racism that's going on. I wasn't aware of this, and a couple of days ago I watched a video with my daughters. I have 2 daughters, 10 and 14 right now, and we watched a video of it was kind of a compilation, and there was one girl, and it was a video about the talk you have. And I'm sure you know what it is, because the talk you have with your kids in Germany usually means you talk about sexual education or something like that. But the talk that you guys have with your kids is mostly about how they should react and be towards police officers. And there was this 8-year-old girl, which basically told the video, the camera, the interviewer, like what she got taught from her parents how to react. Like she was basically taught to, if a police officer stands in front of you, raise your hands, say your name, say you're unarmed. I'm 8 years old. My name is so-and-so. I'm unarmed. It brought us all to tears. Seriously. It was like, and I think a lot of white dudes suddenly start to realize what white privilege really means, because we don't have to teach that our children. And I think a lot more people now start to realize what is actually going on for so many years now. And I think that is a little bit of a change that's going on right now. And I'm quite hopeful that this time around, with George Floyd's death, like that this feels a little bit different than all the other previous demonstrations and protests that have led to not really much progress. You know what I mean?
There was never a resolution after Rodney King. There was never. Rodney King happened and it just kind of stayed out there, you know. The police got off, they rioted in LA, and then it just it just kind of went away, you know.
Right.
And you know, in the Black community, we all know that motherfuckers are getting killed constantly by the police, or, you know, by extremists or whatever. You know, people become Jane and John Does in many of these situations because there's no media behind it. The internet's probably the same thing like with the civil rights movement. If it wasn't for television, I don't think it would have gone as far as it did. And it's the same thing with what's happening now. If it wasn't for fucking social media and all that, then I don't think it would have happened in the same way that it did, because, you know, people wouldn't have known what was going on in Minneapolis in comparison to what was going on in LA, in comparison to what was going on in New York or what was going on in Atlanta. You know, we are. We are very eager to sweep things under the rug so we can keep on with our everyday lives and stuff, you know. I remember Richie had said something a while back. He said that, and this is as far as German is concerned. He said that, you know, he was doing some type of deal or something, and they fell out with the company because there was a problem with communication. And then he said when he learned how to speak German, then he realized what the problem was, because there is a difference between how specific the German language is and how not specific the English language can be, how loose the English language can be. So with German and how you guys deal with things is going to be way different than how we're going to deal with things. And you said there's no race problems in Germany, which I think you're overestimating things. I think there's a shit ton of race problems.
Not as bad as in the US. I'd say that.
Right. I'm sure with the Turks that there are some problems. Yeah. You know, there's tons of problems everywhere. But again, you know, we never had tried, and I'm not talking about healing. I'm just talking about resolve any issues. And, you know, maybe it was possible to have some resolutions that would happen when Obama was in office. But we have to remember that Obama was the first Black president, and that there are forces out there that would have put a bullet through his head if he would have gone too far as resolving many of the racial things that needed to really be resolved in the U.S. And now we have a president that doesn't give a fuck about resolving shit, and is interested in seeing how things get, you know, how far he could push shit to you know, to the brink of maybe that you know, there could be people that come out of the woodworks that want to see a civil war. So with George Floyd and them having his brother speak about police reforming, there's talk about Camden, New Jersey, how they had to reform their police force. You know, this might be the time of of helping us to find some resolution to how these relationships happen. Because you know, you could watch on from the video that you were talking about, you know, there's on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, he makes fun of it, where it's like, it's only my wallet, and he puts the wallet down, he's like, my hands are up, you know. Yeah. And they make fun about that situation. But yes, this is something that I learned. This is something, you know, that I tell my kids about. This is something that every minority in the United States that are of a darker complexion, so I'm talking about Black Americans, Mexican Americans, Latin, any type of Latin Americans, if you come from the Caribbean, any of this kind of stuff, that conversation is most likely going to be had, because you do have somebody like the guy who killed Philando Castile. You know, there was no reason why that man should have got shot, you know. He told him exactly what the fuck he had and that he had a license for it, and that should have been fucking it, you know. Yeah. But you know, these situations, and you know, there are things that are popping up after George Floyd became famous, that, you know, the woman who gets shot in her bed, you know, from the police kicking in the door, you know, from Aubrey, oh man, I can't remember his name, getting Ahmaud Aubrey, yeah. From him getting what is it called when you ambush? He got fucking ambushed.
He got ambushed, yeah.
He got ambushed, you know?
I mean,
luckily this guy, one of the culprits, had a video of it, but he got fucking ambushed.
Yeah. I mean, the police, I mean, I don't even know what it's like for someone who's Black, but I went to traffic court this morning to get out of a ticket. And I remember when the cop pulled me over last year, you know, because you get the feeling that the cops are so trigger happy these days, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
Like, and I had my wallet, like, you know, in like a little man purse that I keep in my car. It kind of had fallen, you know, below the passenger seat, whatever. And he came over, and I realized my wallet's there, not in my pocket.
Reach for it.
And I'm like, you know, I got my hands up. I'm like, well, I'm about to reach down and grab my wallet, which is in that little purse that you see. And then I waited till he shined the flashlight there, whatever, because that's literally how you have to. It's that kind of fear, and I can't even.
But at the same time, you see these right-wing crazies storming the Michigan State Capitol with their AR-15s, you know, protesting that they want to get a haircut in the coronavirus time, and the police is standing there saying like, "Oh, calm down," you know. Imagine these people would have been Black.
Yeah,
like, right. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is so eye-opening. This is so incredibly eye-opening that it's not only one bad apple in there, that this is a systematic thing that's going on in the States.
It's a problem, like Carl says. It's like where we need to find the resolution. You know, like cops getting canceled, or NASCAR not, you know, like you know, making it illegal to have a Confederate flag or whatever. That's all like kind of window dressing, you know. But like what needs to happen is like we need to have some dialogue about the root problems in this country. And I remember I was reading the other day, somebody had forwarded me something about Dave Chappelle, who was doing a stand-up, just like popping into a comedy club or whatever. And somebody in the audience had said something, and then he went on to give a bit of history and context about, you know, the current state of affairs and stuff. And after all that, he started to talk about critical mass, like the idea of critical mass. Like if enough people get together to bring about a change, they can't be ignored. If enough of the population, and that's what's really striking to me right now, is like how many people are aware now of how these wrongs need to be corrected. And how many people are coming together. And I think we need to sustain that energy. And it's seems like it's the perfect time with COVID. Maybe COVID is that opportunity. Maybe that's the opportunity that needs to be seized right now. Everybody come forward and bring about that change. If all of the population, as much of the population as possible, sustain the pressure, maybe that's when it'll happen, because it seems like they're knocking down doors.
And COVID was something that everybody wanted to get the fuck out of the house, and George Floyd was the catalyst for that. I mean, some people were trying to protest against stay-at-home bans and all that kind of stuff. But George Floyd, it was a glaring injustice that was televised, as well as social mediaized. I'm sounding like Jesse Jackson here, but
when did NWA come out with "Fuck the Police"? I mean, it's
92.
92.
Oh, "Fuck the Police" was like 80. It was like 87.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Was it earlier than that? Okay.
Yeah, it was in the 80s.
Okay.
It's more people have cell phones and you have social media. So now people are seeing everything that's been going on for all these years. They're actually able to see it in real time and react to it.
Yeah.
What if they?
What?
Sorry.
No,
I was gonna make a stupid comment.
Go on and say it.
I was like, what if they just made all police officers black, so then white people can know what it feels like to be, profiled?
Shut up, man.
That was stupid. That's what I said.
Shut up. I shouldn't have let you do that.
Yeah, it was a dumb comment.
I mean, I think a lot of people don't have any perspective because they've never experienced it firsthand. I mean, me and David are both Mexican, and growing up here in LA, especially on the east side of the city, man, we never looked at cops as like some sort of saviors of peace or anything like that. When a cop car drove by, it was instant fear. Always, it was like, oh shit, there's a cop.
Yeah.
Like even if you were doing something wrong or not, it was always like that.
Dude, I've been pulled over on riding home on a bicycle at night from my girlfriend's house, and at gunpoint, and be like, where yeah, man, and where the hell are you going?
Me several times
where
as well.
Are you going? And I'm like, I'm riding home from my girlfriend's house, and dude, it's happened several times.
I mean, even just standing in front of my house, I've had police stop by and throw a spotlight on us and like, what the hell are you doing here? I'm like,
you're standing in front
of my house. What's your address?
Why are you outside? I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
I can't fucking stand in my front yard. What the fuck, man?
That's ridiculous. That's fucking ridiculous.
But that's something that, most people don't really have to. They don't have to deal with that. They see a cop and they're like, "Oh, hey, he's here to protect us, and she's looking out for us."
When you're constantly living under that all the time, it's difficult sometimes to differentiate the difference between good cops and bad cops, because you're always standing on defense, no matter what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think with police, because when you're a kid and you see those little indoctrination videos that they give you when you're in middle school, that police are your friend, you see a problem with the police, or you see a problem, call the police, no problem. Yeah. And in minority life, you call the police and that might be a death sentence for somebody. That's not, they're not coming as conflict resolution advisors. They're coming to take somebody to the jail or to take somebody to the morgue. That's like, it's insane how it got to this point, and it's been that point. On my show, I did a little collage. So the last show that I did on my Detroit Love show is a protest music show. So we're playing all protest music, soul protest music from the beginning, and then I go into playing some other stuff at the end. And I found this instrumental of Public Enemy that I really, really loved. So I went on YouTube and I got all this footage and I overlaid it over this Public Enemy bed of beats. And one of them was of a police officer. He's a black police officer. This is Detroit, during the Detroit riots in 1967. And this officer said that, you know, he decided to be a cop to make a change. He's a black officer. And it was one situation, I think. It was he saw somebody get abused by the police when he was 14. So he decided he was going to make a change. And he became a police officer. And the riots happened. And am I still there? Okay.
Yeah.
And the riots happened. And he was coming home. He had on his uniform. And he gets stopped by other police. And he said they had their guns drawn out, and he got out of the car. He had his uniform, and he says, "Hey, I'm a police officer." And the one older officer said, "I don't care. Tonight, N-word, you're gonna die." And he heard that, and he jumped back in the car and tried to drive off as best as he could to get away. And he saw the guy pulling the trigger as he's doing it, and the guy shot at him. So, you know, this is the kind of thing that we're living with in the U.S. for centuries, since the first black slaves set foot on land. You know, I mean, the situation was not in Manchester, but I think it's Bristol. They took down
Bristol, yeah. The statue
right.
of the
they
one
took down the
slave.
statue.
Yeah.
And you know, it got me thinking about what slave traders were, and to put a statue of a slave trader up is technically glorifying what the slave trader did. But in today's terms of a slave trader, he's not just a pimp, but he's a serial rapist and a serial killer.
Mm.
And would you ever put up you wouldn't even put up a statue of Charles Manson, let alone somebody who was considered Jeffrey Dahmer or any of these people that are known to be serial killers, Ted Bundy, you know, guys like that. So, you know, our priorities get all fucked up, and in the black community, we have a way of glorifying, you know, people within our community that might have been considered bad people, but you have to take the bad and then turn it into good in order to sometimes have, you know, role models. But, you know, within the American community, you know, we look at even some of these guys like Donald Trump as being, you know, as something that you should live your life by, because he's you know, a billionaire and he became president or whatever. And this guy is trying to fan the flames by having his rally in Tulsa, where the biggest race riot happened, where they killed so many black people on the celebration of the end of slavery, June 19th, Juneteenth. And,
right.
you know, it's just all this shit that is happening in the world. How can you make changes? How can you make a difference? How can you make these things when there's just so many opposing forces, so much evil, you know, that is flippantly put out there? It's just flippant, like, it's just like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this. We don't give a fuck whether it was Tulsa that you know, all these people got murdered and slaughtered and shit, you know. We're Christopher Columbus, you know, our history with Christopher Columbus is starting to look more grim than what it was when we were learning in grade school.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump doesn't even want to have the dialogue about, like, you know, the fact that everybody wants to tear down all the Confederacy kind of symbols, you know, and statues.
He doesn't have capacity.
Yeah, he doesn't even want to have that conversation. He just announced recently. So
Did they,
Carl,
decapitate one of the Columbus statues somewhere?
Yeah,
they like decapitated the statue.
Oh yeah, I did see it. That was in Boston.
I recommend to everyone to watch the last episode of John Oliver's Last Week Tonight about police. I don't know if you've seen that. I just posted the links in the comment section of my Facebook and YouTube. That's a really, really good overview over the past, I don't know, 100 years of policing in the United States, where you've gotten to. But Carl, do you feel there's hope now? Does it feel different this time?
Well, with and talking about comedy, political comedy,
right.
After the presidential election happened in 2016, I could not watch political comedy in the same way, because it made us feel that we were all on the same page, where it really came out that, look, there are a lot of people that aren't on the same page as us. We're listening to what people are saying, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm smart enough to understand it, but we weren't smart enough to decode it. And it gives a false sense of security, a lot of political comedy, because the comedians make it seem like we're in control, and we're really not. So I try to stay away from it.
But that one is different. It's not a comedy show anymore. This is just like pretty much a pretty blunt overview of what's going on.
Oh, he's not doing comedy, John Oliver?
It's not comedy anymore. No, it's pretty serious. It's really serious.
Your shit's real now.
Oh man. But as far as hope is concerned, I just hope that the people who are protesting are for real. That it's not another sense of white privilege that's going on. I hope that they are realizing that they are protecting their future as much as they're protecting the future of their fellow human beings. And as far as anti-racism and the potential of eradicating racism, I think the only way that we can all get on the same page is something that will never happen, which is if there was a Martian invasion or something, that it has to be something so outrageous like that to make us understand that we're not the same black race or white race or brown race or red race or anything, that we're just all fucking humans and we got to work together to do this. No world war will ever do that, because you're competing and you're fighting against everybody within your same fucking race.
2020 is not over yet.
Closest to that, right?
That's right. We're only halfway through the year.
2020 is not over yet. The alien invasion still can come.
I mean, I'm not trying. I don't believe that'll ever happen.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get into the science fiction realm here, but that's a very significant statement, because that is something that makes humans separate themselves. I mean, less separate themselves when you realize that you're actually one universal race if there were lives outside of this galaxy. You know what I mean? Like living entities. That would be something that would actually create a uniform change.
It would have to, because you're looking to save the human race, not just looking to save, people of the same complexion.
Exactly.
Very true.
Well, conversation worth having, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like Independence Day, the movie. The whole world comes together and has to fight against the aliens. Otherwise, the whole world dies.
Right. Because of course they're going to be the clever ones that try to negotiate their way out of stuff. Right. They're going to be the ones that are the rich ones. Like, oh, well, I've got $100 billion. I shouldn't be treated this way. And then, You know, if it's a point where, and maybe the other aspect of it is that the monetary system just falls apart. But the monetary system is not going to fall apart by burning down banks, because they don't have any fucking money in banks. It's all digital now.
Oh, digital. It's all
so, you know, people who think that they are going to burn down, you know, Target, and that's going to make a difference, has nothing to, you know, they don't have any sense of it. And they don't have any sense that the people who are starting to burn down the Target are provocateurs any fucking way, you know? So it's just that, seriously, looking at the history of man and looking at everything, that if it's not an alien invasion, but it ends up being that monetary aspect of it, we all are blown in the caves again and shit. There's a fucking comet that hits the Earth and then destroys half of the population. That's still even difficult to think about, because if it blew up South America, then you still come to the US and then people still have houses intact and stuff, then you still have value. Yeah. So you still have something that's above somebody else in that way.
Yeah.
And if you could make it where the only thing that you have potentially above somebody else is your complexion, then that makes the playing field maybe a lot more level, because it's what you see, but then it's about your abilities. And if you have somebody who is lighter complected versus somebody who's darker complected, but the darker complected guy is a much better warrior, then that's gonna make shit completely obliviate. And if you're looking to stay alive and you got to follow this motherfucker who looks like Grace Jones' brother or something, versus somebody who looks like Adolf Hitler or whatever, but the guy that's Adolf Hitler is talking a whole bunch of shit and ain't doing nothing, but the guy who looks like Grace Jones is kicking ass and taking names, then fuck it, I'm with Grace Jones, brother. I'm with this motherfucker right here. Let's go. You know, let's do this shit. We're gonna make the world a better place. We're gonna survive with this. I think they tried to touch on a lot of that with and I never watched the show, but it was the television show about zombies, Walking Dead or something.
Yeah.
I think they touched on some aspects of this, and then when they brought in that guy that was just a motherfucking crazy, with a bat with barbed wire around it or whatever, and just beating motherfuckers to oblivion and shit.
But it's like in the end, there's still the human element where there's going to be the alpha that's going to be the one that's taking control of the whole situation, no matter what color or whatever they are. And who knows which way they will be leaning towards, if it's going to be a unity thing or it's going to be, hey, let's say if it's like a strong white person that takes control, are they going to focus more on the white followers than everybody else? Are they, you know what I mean? There's the human part of it too. You're just like,
yeah,
what the hell is going to happen at this point? You know, it's just so deeply ingrained in us, the separation because of color and race. It's just like, how do you get out of that? It's, man, I don't know.
It's tough. I don't think a comment's going to do it. I think it would have to be something like an alien invasion, which will never happen. Yeah, that's the only way. There's
So that means you're not very hopeful.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Right.
There's
I think you're realistic.
Yeah. They're these twins in England somewhere. They might be in Wales or something. And the mother is half black, the father is Welsh or whatever, and so not black at all. And they had a set of twins, and one twin is brown skin, and the other twin is pale with freckles and red hair. and they do not look like relatives. They don't look like siblings. They definitely don't look like fraternal twins. They don't look related at all. And I love that. But also, I'm really curious to what the next step goes after that. To if the red-haired, freckly girl gets indoctrinated by somebody else, or her kids get indoctrinated, and then they just decide to like not be in that family anymore because it doesn't look like they're in that family anymore. You know, that she's not part of that family. She might look like the father, but she doesn't look anything like her twin sister, and maybe not like the mother. So I had a driver years ago that had told me he didn't understand why race was such an issue in the US, because in Colombia, where he's from, he's got relatives that are blonde and blue hair. And this is a very dark man, blonde and blue hair. And then he's got dark skin family members, and he has brown skin family members, and he has in between, and he has all these things. And he just never understood why it's such a big deal with race in the United States. And of course, some places, you know, it's possible where you do see that there is a melting pot. There is not such a impact. But in the U.S., unfortunately, we have 400 years of this bullshit, and unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna have any resolution before another 400 years.
Well,
so
I have an interesting perspective on the interfamily thing, because I come from a very culturally diverse background. Half of my family is Egyptian and the other half is Mexican. So my mom is Egyptian Muslim and my father's side of the family is Mexican Catholic. And I grew up in an incredibly diverse family because of all the religious differences and colors within our family as well. Like my father,
may I mention that his name is Mohammed Jesus.
That's
yeah, there you go. So it speaks it out right there. But you know, even like my grandfather, my father's father, he was Jewish. He was a Hungarian Jew who fled from the war and immigrated to Mexico because they wouldn't even let him into the U.S. He was a redhead. You know, he was straight up red hair, red beard, everything. And my grandmother was from Mazatlan and has decades and decades and decades of history from Mexico, was dark skinned as well. But I have to say, I mean, as much as I would like to say like, oh, our family was this, you know, utopian, you know, culturally diverse thing, it wasn't always that way. I experienced racial issues even within my own family. On my Mexican side of the family, I was never Mexican enough. You know, I had this crazy, oh, well, yeah, your family are Muslims and they're those terrorists, and you get that whole thing. And then from my Muslim side of the family, it was the same thing. Like, oh, well, you shouldn't hang out with them because they're going to the Catholic Church so much, and you should spend more time at the mosque. And it was always this push and pull for me, which eliminated racism and color from me personally. But I can't say that it always applied to every member of my family. Of course, there were always more liberal people in my family, and then there were more who were so much more short-sighted. So I've seen race on so many different issues, and it's not always for me about like eliminating racial issues between white and black. It's also eliminating racial issues between Asian people and black people, and Mexican and Asian people, and everything, because I've seen it from every direction, every culture, every color, every kind. Yeah. And I mean, as much as I'd like to stay optimistic that there will be change coming, I fall into a similar line as you, where I feel like I don't know if we're going to get the change that everyone is praising about, but I do see things moving in waves and swashing back and forth, where there's less racial inequality at certain times, and then people will be radicalized and it'll come back at times, and it's always constantly a push. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you're right. It is gonna push and pull. It's gonna do these things, because the same with fashion. You know, fashion comes back every 15 years or something. Peg legs or or bootlegs or whatever, and it's just a generation that brings it back, and it's just an unfortunate thing. That's part of the mental illness that we have as humans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's continue to make music that people unite.
Protest music.
Protest music, yeah.
Carl, we've been doing this for 2.5 hours. It was amazing to have you as a guest. It was so good. It seems like we've covered everything from early Detroit to alien invasions.
The only thing we didn't cover is we didn't have the vinyl versus digital debate, which we can save for another.
Oh, man.
And it still feels like we could talk for another 10 hours and listen to you for another 10 hours. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
Paul.
I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, for sure.
I hear you have a talk tomorrow with the Movement Detroit guys.
Yeah.
For those who want to join in, what time is it going to be? Where?
That's a good question.
And who's going to be on there? Stacey Pullen?
It's Stacy, Seth Troxler, and I'm not sure who the fourth person was. I thought it was supposed to be Mike Servito, which would have been good.
It's hosted by Chris Campbell, and it's
Chris Campbell.
You, Stacy, and Seth, and it's at live on Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Friday, which is tomorrow at 3 p.m.
Yeah, good. So,
Eastern time?
What's that? 9 o'clock CET time, right?
Correct.
No, that's
I'm going to watch you.
not yet.
Yeah.
So,
cheers, guys.
cheers to that. Carl, thanks for being on.
It's
Thanks
been an
very
honor
much.
to talk to you, man, and hear your stories. Honestly, you've been a huge inspiration on us, and like I'm just happy to be a fly on the wall and just hear your stories.
Hearing those
Honestly.
stories are amazing, man.
Thanks, brother. Thank you very much. Thanks, brothers.
Yeah,
Cool.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody. Thank you.
We'll be back next week with our guest Danny Tenaglia, actually.
Yeah.
All right. Peace.
Peace out, everyone. Ciao.
Peace.